video.
You may want to turn up your sound, Tony, so we can hear.
Oh.
Can't hear that.
Okay. So, do you guys will hear that? I have to take my microphone.
Not really, no.
I didn't, so it didn't make a lot. I mean, I was reading through it fast, but I couldn't hear if that made a difference.
All right, I'll figure out in the future how to do this better with the mic there. I had to hold my headset against the TV there. Bottom line is, from you probably made from the cartoon. It's a guy that wants to be able to talk into his phone and connect to different devices in his house, and using this technology. And keep in mind, all those devices are basically made by different properties, different manufacturers, different components, different build software, right? So an API is again that bridge where it tries to be very it doesn't care about what technology you're doing, or it does, but to a developer, the idea of an API is basically here's this little bundle, this bag of Legos. Just take the pieces. You don't have to worry about how it's built, but just hook it onto your piece of what you're building, and then it should just all work nicely.
Hey, Tony, by the way, I cannot help it because I've been meaning to talk to everybody about this. But do you see that screen, that shot of the Uber map? Is it, right?
On the image?
Yeah, that image is an Uber map, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So just for you guys when they travel, and whenever you're told that an Uber X doesn't exist, all you've got to do is move the map to find an Uber X, and they'll come and get you at the airport that you're landing in. So just a little tip, and only because I've seen a couple of expenses where an Uber Black was available and that was it. That's not always that doesn't have to be the case. But when I talk to you about the Uber map, this is what I'm talking to you about. Now it's out of context here, Tony. But sorry to hijack, but I'll let you get back to your presentation.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so today we wanted to. Did anybody read this article, by the way? It was very long, so I should have got it. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, guys. So essentially here, we just wanted to highlight is Uber is an example that we want to kind of highlight today on why APIs are becoming really effective in our society. Now, as you can see the article, it's really pro-Uber in that Uber is one of the better companies today that utilizes this idea very well. Like, if you let's just look at this picture for example. There are multiple APIs in here that you may not even realize. To the casual user, it's like, wow, cool app. It's got maps. It's got it's got pop-ups. It's got communication. It's got GPS. It's got all these little animated icons, and it's got automatic billing, payments, everything. Right? It's all integrated. But the smart thing about Uber is they didn't have to reinvent all the wheel here, right? They don't have to build their own maps application. They don't have to build their entire billing backend system. They don't have to go and find a GPS, and have GPS software. They use the concept of APIs, which is essentially built by other companies that are already leasing this out and sharing this out for to the world. Okay, so in this case, Google Maps. Google Maps has an API that basically allows Uber or any other company says if you want a Maps application in your software, just reference this package here, and here is the instructions on how you would build it into your code, and voila. You guys must have seen many applications like this, Yelp and any other sites out there that just uses say maps, right? Traffic, anything like that. Meanwhile, the nice thing about it is Google is the one that's maintaining all that software on the maps. Now, obviously, if Google Maps goes away or completely destroys, then Uber is in trouble. They don't have their own built-in homegrown software to base their application on. They're going to have to find a separate solution. But the concept of APIs is really everyone sharing these models. If you actually look at this page right here, you actually see some APIs on the screen. right here, I'm going to ask. So take a look at just this website. Is there anything on this screen that you can notice is an API or has API hooks to this Fortune website? Anybody?
I would think if there's a shopping cart, that's an API.
Right here. See this little icon? Mail, Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, LinkedIn. These are APIs, guys. If I click on these right now, it will take me to a pop-up site, which you guys can't see because it's outside there, and tells me, share this article on your LinkedIn website, and here's an update, and here's your email address, and post it to groups and whatever. Same for Twitter. I want to directly tweet this, tie this to my account, sign in. Facebook, put this on my newsfeed wall, Google Plus, etc. This site itself, Fortune, is using APIs, right? So it's and this is not uncommon. You guys have seen nowadays it's very popular for sites to utilize use social marketing and other types of avenues, Pinterest and such, to to share their information around the world and share it with your friends and such. And again, all the concept of APIs. Nobody here wrote these applications. They're just using what's already available for them by these other companies and using it for their own business. So so it's really powerful how now APIs is not just in this article goes on further to talk about there are companies specifically in the market for building APIs. So they in integration services. So I shared another article. Embedded in this stream was about a company named MuleSoft. They're a startup company in San Francisco. Actually, a friend of mine is a performance test manager there. They raised 128 million last round, which is pretty cool. But they're actually in the industry for exactly this business. They work with companies like, as you can see, like MasterCard, Nestle, Tesla. You wonder, like, whoa, Sutter Health. Why would they care? Like, why would they need to? Why would they want to be invested in these interests? Verizon, News Corp. But their whole job is to basically build those Lego bridges for corporations that aren't necessarily software companies, but they have an interest in reaching out and branding and merging with other types of technologies. Because nowadays, as you guys may realize it, the technology is really starting to funnel. It's while it's spread out and everyone's doing different things, the technology is really it's unifying more and more, right? With with mobile growing, becoming a source, for example, of your remote control to control your TV, but your garage and everything with Internet of Things. The convergence idea. More and more of these APIs that are being written by all these different companies need to find a way to find its way back into the ecosystem, so it talks to other APIs. So companies like MuleSoft, API.ai, which I just showed you that video on, another company called Apogee. They're in the business and they basically okay. All right. So any questions so far? We'll stop right there and pause it. Any thoughts and questions on why this is happening and does it make sense? Why companies are starting to invest their time and efforts and money into APIs?
Tony, this is Tom. I think one of the major things that's cool about this is that you see Uber's valuation at $50 billion, and it's nothing more than hooking together a bunch of technologies together via APIs. It's worth a lot of money.
Exactly. That's actually what this article kind of, you think about it, right? You're right. All they're doing is putting the puzzle pieces together. They didn't invent anything, and they put the entire taxi industry, on strike, right? Or on protest, around the world. And these guys, and I'm reading other news now that Uber itself is starting to become a buzzword, right? Like a verb, like being Ubered, as you said in this article, where other companies are now trying to follow Uber's model and do other things. I read the other day someone was trying to Uber for jobs, like being able to, or not jobs. What is it? There was there's an Uber service for basically bringing you lunch, and who's the closest nearby company will basically you can track those cars that drive around. They hook into those, what do you call those, food trucks and such, and you can actually have an application where you can see who's near you and get there. So it's the whole, again, you think they're inventing and building their own technology? No, they're just using the concept of combination of maps and payment payment APIs and in any kind of search. So, so question number two: what are some pros and cons of a company using these external APIs versus developing them in-house?
Well, I mean, obviously the positive is it's already there, but I was looking at this last night, and I mean, you just your lack of control. If there's bugs in it, you're at the mercy of the people that do own it. If they've got something, on their page or something, like I was just reading, like they were talking about loading of pages and stuff or whatever, but it's just that you don't have that internal control. You're more of a dependent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, right? Especially if you're a company in a business where you don't want to share your information with anyone, right? You want to keep everything in-house. We work with a lot of companies that do that. HP, ETT, those are companies that having these APIs. But that the funny thing is that I would say 10 years ago, if the concept of an API would be absolutely a no-no, especially for traditional companies that are it's want to make sure everything is kept, all their content and intellectual property is kept in-house. These days, large companies that are public and are doing more of this. So you're seeing a trend in corporations that are traditionally stay behind closed doors starting to open up because they realize if they don't keep up with the technology of not necessarily open source but just open APIs, REST APIs, things like that, they're going to be losing in the game because they have to build everything in-house, and that takes time and money, right? So that is definitely one of the challenges for a company like that. Okay. The other thing that the other thing about APIs is they aren't necessarily always good. Okay, so do you realize that just because the concept of APIs is great, everyone's thinking of ways to make cross connectivity and compatibility across everyone's. It's not always a good thing. So one example I can tell you is companies that build these APIs that all of a sudden everyone starts relying on them and decide to pull the API because they don't want to invest any more time and money into it could screw a lot of companies, right? One example is Google. Google's done it. They built this. Do you guys remember Google Reader? Okay, Google Reader was like essentially it was a combination. What do you call those?
Kindle.
Yes, it's no, not the read, not the actual device. It's like an RSS feed of all the bookmarks and stories you want to read, and just say you personalize your page. I want to read
aggregator.
Aggregator. Thank you for that. So it was an aggregator that was on Google's web homepage. If you log into Google, your first thing you show up is Google Reader, and you can aggregate all the articles you like. You pick your genres and in your technology folder and my fashion folder, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Google Reader had an API that hooked into a lot of companies where they started utilizing that on their websites. So you could, let's say, QAnalysts could have a website with a Google Reader API, and then we could be scrolling on the right-hand side and make everything that has to do with QA and BI that comes out. But all of a sudden, Google just killed their API. They realized Reader was not a good product. No one was using it, and like any project, you kill it to stop spending more money into it, and it screwed a lot of websites. Yahoo's done that. Twitter did that recently with their API. They had early on, not recently, but about 5 years ago, Twitter was building an API for other companies to utilize their tweet feed, and then they can create their own third-party Twitter applications. TweetDeck, and there's some other ones that are out there that you could download on your desktop. And then they decided that this API they're going to pull it for promotional purposes and advertising. They were actually losing money, and then all of a sudden all the applications and people that are invested in startup companies building off of Twitter's API feed got screwed because they no longer have that way of simply utilizing their wall feed and build their own. So it's not always so sometimes another challenge there is if you depend too much on the API, and back to the example I used about maps, right? If Google ever pulled maps from this page, well, guess what, right? Uber is going to have to scramble and find another successor or build their own. So that's definitely a challenge. Okay, so I guess the last question is for businesses using the software integration like APIs, what are some things that QA analysts should be made aware of when we're talking to clients in this space?
What agreements they have in place already.
Okay, good.
Can you talk about that a little bit, Tom, kind of the context of your question?
Sure. You mean the answer to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you want to know when you're talking to companies, if they're using APIs and they're using content that isn't their own, who are they partnering with and what's the responsibility? You know, who's providing what to them and what do they control versus what do they don't control? Think about our conversation with Union Bank, right? What's in his control, what's not in his control. When you start proliferating your business out to various players, it's both good and bad. And like Deb said, you get content pre-built for you, but you're at the mercy if they want to change it. So what are their agreements in place? And what happens when those agreements go south? What are the contingency plans? What are the security plans? How do they report across it in BI? Whole number of questions.
Got it. Thanks.
So Tony, you've stopped on a great page because Hertz is one of my targets, and I'm looking for a way to crack that nut because they are in a difficult time as a company. But who would I want to reach out to there, and what would be the right things to say to get them on a call with you?
Good question. Good question. Like, I certainly I think Tom's question has all kinds of value there, right? If you're talking with Hertz, I'm assuming you reach out to, in this case, a development manager or maybe a data integration expert, someone, and you're having this. You get to a point where you're having a technical conversation about their how their system is set up. That you're going to want to ask the question, like, are you using third-party integration software like APIs for your business, right? And if you are, so in my world as a QA person, my concern number one would be, well, where is that testing happening? Because think about it for a second. APIs are typically done by third parties if it's not done in-house, right? Or they could be it's like again, let's go back to the Lego picture. Let's say Gail, you built that castle and I built a garage, and I want to bridge to your castle. Well, at what point do I stop building and you take over? Do I build half a bridge? Do I build no bridge? Do I build all the bridge? Or does someone else come in, like a third-party company, and build that whole entire bridge for us, right? But whether it's you're doing a third of it or you doing 3/4 of it, whatever, it doesn't matter. We would agree on that. But at this point, then it's like, okay, well, what about the testing? At what point does my testing stop where we're stop building our part of the work, right? If we put an integration function out there, let's say I'm Hertz and I'm a back-end system. All I do is aggregate, inventory of cars, and I say you're Hertz, and you want to say I want all the different, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but I want all the different GMs out there, and you're talking to me, and I'm the okay, well, you can use this API and this will tell you all the GMs are, but you want to test and make sure, like, well, at what point are you searching for GMs? That comes from your system, or when you're getting the data returned from it, it's coming from my system. So where is that crossover stop? Where do we have that conversation that you own the testing for up to this point, and the other company owns the testing up to this point, and then someone has to test the integration, the crossover, right? Who does that integration end to end from your system to my system, and make a callback? There is a lot of there's going to be overlap. Is certainly going to happen when you're anytime you're dealing with third-party integration software. So I don't know. Does that answer your question? I think you're asking more of who should you talk to, but I'm assuming once you find out who that is, those are questions you would want to ask.
Yeah, well, it'd be more of like the cold call question, to get like a hook, to get them to want to talk to us, to intrigue them, to get you to the table. That's our whole goal, is to get them to the table with you or with Tom or both. Okay.
Yeah. Well, for me, like, if I would be interested in people at any company like Hertz and Avis that is in charge of their engineering practices, right? That is working on their software to go and to put into their system, whether it's through mobile applications or their or if the software is talking to the databases and they need to retrieve data that you talk to Tom. I mean, essentially, it's you'd start there with the technical crowd, the head of engineering or the development manager or directors, the guys that have the strategy for the technology roadmap. And if obviously it includes a mobile piece to it, then they might have someone that will be overseeing that particular property, like Uber, right? It's all an app. Most of their whole business is based off an application. There's tons of data that they have to store in the cloud and retrieve from servers, but it all starts with the application. So if we're talking to Uber and we want to get into their space, we'd probably want to find the person that is overseeing the mobile development for the application, and then from there spawn out and see if, and that's where I'd come in. It's like who oversees Hertz's development strategy. Let's talk to him about what their roadmap is.
Okay, thanks.
Any other thoughts on questions we could? We were in a meeting with these type of companies, Open Tables, Google Maps, Starbucks. According to this example here, regarding if they're using API technology, what are some things we should think about when we're having conversations with them? That'd be useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do they guarantee performance? I mean, if you're hooked to another app through an API, how do you guarantee that Google Maps is going to load fast enough for you if you're Uber or other things like that?
Yeah.
A whole host of questions come up when you do distributed business models like that.
What about security and privacy, right? What about data storage? It's APIs access. You're basically bridging to someone else's business and accessing anything that comes out of there. So if you want to send data back and forth, you don't know what that is. Does the API have a level of security in there that won't necessarily decrypt your encrypted software, your data, right? So certainly, ask about performance, ask about security, ask about who they're partnering with, ask about who's in charge of their testing and their integration strategy. APIs typically are very easy. They're not complicated pieces of code. They're essentially, like I said, it's a package that some company would build and then label it, and you typically don't have to know what's on the inside. It's like I said, it's a wrapper. Think of it as let's see. I'll make a silly analogy here, but think about it as like you have a Coke bottle, a Coke 2-liter bottle, and you want to, and it says the word Coke on it, and you want to put your own label over that Coke bottle, call it Analysts soda, and then basically and put a little magic sauce inside the soda. But essentially now it's like, hey, I got my own Analysts soda, but I didn't really change anything on the inside. All I changed was the labeling, and I wrapped it, because and someone built that little label for you to wrap it, and you don't necessarily have to know what all that magic secret sauce is, because that's what these API companies do. But inside there, you can specify, I want this API to make this soda turn red, right? And then now it's my own. Now anybody on the outside that comes to buy your soda, it's red soda on the shelves at Safeway that says Analysts, don't know that you guys, all you did was, simply wrap your soda around it and maybe change a few colors, because then you've customized it. So in some sense, it's very easy to be very transparent to APIs, but what goes in there, what is done, it has to be tested, questioned, and there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes that you need to negotiate before. But to the casual user, it looks great, right? Like this picture right here. It looks like Uber built an app and did all this crazy functionality. Okay, any other questions or comments? I'm going to wrap up. We're at the hour.
No, I'm glad you did this, though, because it was something when I was reading about it that I wasn't really sure of what it was. So it was actually very eye-opening, so thank you.
Good. Okay.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.